Welcome to the Qualified Tutor podcast. I'm your host, Ludo Miller, and I'll be interviewing tutors and thought leaders from across the tutoring landscape to inspire, inform, and motivate you to become the best tutor you can be. The Qualified Tutor community is a safe and supportive space for tutors who love to learn and grow. We offer training, resources, ideas, and a chance to connect with like-minded tutors. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join our Qualified Tutor community at www.qualifiedtutorcommunity.org or find it in the show notes. Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Qualified Tutor podcast. I'm delighted today to be joined by Georgina Green, founder of the Green Tutors agency and of the Tackling Tutoring Online Facebook network, of which I'm a part and of which there is a whole load of resources being released, especially at this time, to the 100 or 200 strong network of tutors. Welcome, Georgina, today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So I thought, today would be a really great conversation to have regarding some of the key aspects of tutoring, looking ahead into this summer, looking at kind of with regard to the National Tutoring Programme, having that in our mind, but also using the online environment that tutoring has now created to see what benefits that can bring to students and also to tutors, making sure that we look out for both strands. So how have you been kind of mediating the past few months with regard to online tutoring, Georgina?
So from my own perspective, we did already do a fair amount of work online, and having a significant amount of experience in working in industry, working across the internet is not really a new thing for me. We have departments in other countries that we work with, but as soon as we went into lockdown, I started reaching out to some teacher friends that I knew about how things were going for them since the school closed, and I hadn't quite appreciated how big of a jump it was for them to have to go entirely online. I appreciate it would be a bit of a shock to the system to not be able to see their students in class, but they genuinely had no experience with. I think you don't appreciate how much you've had to learn to get to where you are once you've done it. So it was a big jump for them.
What do you think the kind of the biggest jump has been? What was it that tested them so much early on from moving that syllabus online or moving that delivery online?
We all kind of fed back with different things. I suppose there's stuff that is going to be different for teachers than for myself as a tutor. So I would introduce them to the online platforms that I use to talk to my students. And then they introduced their safeguarding restrictions that they can't actually have video calls with their students, a lot of them. So that kind of throws out everything that I was doing with my students. They can't actually see the person that they're talking to. And then once you do, how do you engage the student? And once you've set up some resources for them and you've recorded this lovely lesson for them, how do you actually engage them in doing that when they're in the class? How do you actually get feedback from them about whether they've understood what you've said? How do you get work back from them that you can't see their books for? There was a lot of obstacles for them.
You learn fast, don't you?
Yeah.
I think there's research out recently that showed that the online tutoring can really make great gains in terms of catching up quicker than face-to-face tutoring. Or obviously have to see maybe perhaps more results on that, or to see perhaps further down the line what the effect of this online environment will be. But what do you see as really the key benefits of the online environment of tutoring a student, on a laptop with a virtual whiteboard?
There's a lot to it. I mean, I can appreciate that there's value in actually being in the room with the student, and it's nice to be actually with them when they're learning, but it's not a requirement, and you can still build that relationship with students on the internet and through a camera. I think there's students now are much more tech savvy than the teachers themselves were as students. Like, they all know how to use their mobile phone. They can FaceTime each other, so they're quite happy to FaceTime someone else. There's an absolute wealth of resources online that you can use in your tutoring. And there's loads of things that you probably wouldn't use if you were in the classroom with them. So you can have, it can end up being a lot less teacher time. You can give the students resources to work with, let them consume that, and then come back to assess how they've understood it and then work with them on it. So you can end up helping a lot more students in a lot less time that way.
Yeah. And that's going to be key, really, isn't it, for programs like the National Tutoring Programme or other programs that are launched kind of subsequently. But is that going to be able to reach as many students as possible with as effective tutoring as possible? And I think that ability to not only reach a large class size and not have all those kind of classroom management issues that you might have in a classroom where, you know, there's students kind of disrupting each other at the back or whatever, but also being able to reach students in, you know, across the country or even across the world, really. You know, that's how quick it is, isn't it? And of course, that there are important issues there about you know, having an internet connection and having a computer, but you know, you do feel that is being slowly sort of covered and being managed. But yeah, the reach of it is really amazing, isn't it? You know, I've had, you know, early on in lockdown, you know, I was waking up kind of sort of very early in the morning to tutor students in China, and then, you know, you have a couple of hours, you know, to kind of an hour or two for breakfast and sort of get yourself together, prepare for the next session, and then it would be kind of for students who just finished their learning from school in England. And you do feel that is just really one of the most amazing parts of kind of being a tutor in lockdown, was it was all happening in front of you and you felt like you were really kind of on you know, on the cutting edge of that. But moving into a topic that you do know a lot about, Georgina, what, in terms of you know, a lot of parents and a lot of students and conversely, you know, sort of off the back of that, a lot of tutors are really going to be preparing themselves this summer for how and the approach that they need to take to exams, these upcoming exams that have either been delayed or that are being taken in August. What do we think the situation is going to be looking like with these sort of retaken GCSEs and A-levels?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it is very worrying for the people that are having to do them, but that's probably not a new thing. I can see students getting ridiculously stressed every time they have to do exams. It's the extra uncertainty around this year that makes it a bit more intimidating. But there has been quite a lot of information shared about that. Students will absolutely be doing an exam series in next summer, and they will have the option to do a full exam series in the autumn. So the results that come out this August aren't the end for the students that were supposed to take their exams this summer. There's a lot of things being put into the curriculum and the exam schedule to make things easier for students. They're looking at moving the start back a couple of weeks, taking out some of the topics in the curriculum, removing some of the practical elements to reduce the teaching time. And there's going to be, I think there's going to be some impact from the time that we have spent working online that has produced this massive load of extra resources and greater access for students working in that way, that they'll have more potential to catch up working at home. And I think it really is going to be the students that develop those independent working skills that get the biggest benefit out of this year.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. It's not anything that comes easily, so it does take practice.
Yeah. Develop your independent working skills.
Absolutely.
Particularly easy piece of advice to follow. So, but you know, and working with a tutor can really improve that independent study, can't it? Because they can give you tips for how to go off and do it by yourself, and obviously the time that a student spends working by themselves or working with their parents, that is going to be a far more effective time than that hour, let's say, they get with the tutor, because that, you know, it's limited and there's far more hours in a day than just kind of that hour in a week, for example. But I think that's a really positive objective for students looking into this summer, isn't it? Is, you know, those who will benefit the most, those who will do best from these retaken exams, because schools are not in, and because this summer is going to be such a hard-working summer compared to any other summer for everyone, by the way, not just for students, but talking to kind of teachers who've gone, that wonderful summer I always get, gone. Tutors who go, there's a bit of break, you can sort of recalibrate over summer, gone. But that's fine. We're now also used to working this busily, but it's not a problem. But yeah, for students to know that those who are able to work by themselves will capitalise the most. That's a really positive objective. But I just wanted, just before maybe we move on to what people can be doing, tutors and students can be doing this summer, I just wanted to pick up on something that you mentioned there, which I thought was really important. So if it is decided that certain modules will be removed from GCSEs and A-levels so that, that learning that was missed isn't such an issue, how can tutors keep up to date with those changes? If it is decided that modules are removed, how can tutors adapt quickly to that kind of learning or that difference in delivery?
So the information, all of the information that I've got, I've taken off of the gov.uk pages and the Ofqual pages. So it's all there. It's just huge documents and not the most exciting reading. When it's decided, it's that it went through a proposal. The proposal is now closed for consultation, and the final announcement is due beginning of August, so not long. And that should be, I'm sure that will be published on those same pages. And then that will lead to the exam boards having to make any adjustments to their curricula and specimen papers required. So those will all be available online. But from the way that the proposal described it, the actual changes that get made will be down to the teachers. So there'll be optional changes. So it will be different for students in different schools. So yeah, you're going to have to rely to a degree on students giving you good information, which never goes very well.
Yeah, that's not what tutors want to hear, is it?
No. I'm hoping, so a lot of the time schools will publish information that's quite helpful about exam boards on their websites. And I'm very much hoping that will be the case for these changes as well, because students don't remember what they've done.
Yeah. No, they don't. It's not up to them, is it, really?
No.
But that's a very useful point there, isn't it? Is that if you are a tutor who works with, let's say, or works very closely with a student from a particular school, or who works with several students from a school, then following their releases, social media or their press releases, will be really important. So, it's about staying up to date, isn't it? If you work with tutors who have GCSEs or A-levels this summer, it is really up to you to know what they'll be learning, and following, being part of tutor communities or Facebook groups is a really good way of keeping up to date with that. There's notification comes in, I know what the history A-level course will look like. It's really as simple as that. Whereas otherwise you're having to kind of trawl through government documents, as you said.
And you can't know everything, so it's much easier with a network. Somebody else will know what you're looking for.
Yeah, well, if you don't know, you post it in there, and then someone replies. Yeah. So, moving, off the back of that, really is a very similar vein. Is kind of what can tutors and students be doing this summer? How can we make use of this summer as opposed to other summers in the past where maybe we've taken kind of time off? What is it that needs to be done in this summer for tutors and students to be ready for the return to school?
Well, it's not going to be popular, but like you said, everyone's having to do it. You just kind of have to suck it up and put the work in. I see it every year when you come back to start with students in September. They can't even hold their pen properly anymore. They certainly can't write a full page because they've not used any of that through the whole summer holidays, and that's 6 weeks, and it's now going to be months. So they really need to make sure that they're at the bare minimum. They should certainly be trying to read more regularly, because that helps to keep the brain active, and improving your reading skills makes a massive difference to your learning. They should certainly be trying to make sure that they've caught up with the contents of the curriculum for the exams that they'll be studying. I shared a whole bunch of that in my Facebook group, like how you can find your curriculum and how you can actually start using it effectively. But yeah, they are going to have to develop them independent learning skills. So because it takes practice to make good notes, to revise effectively, and to actually develop the focus that you need, the earlier you start, the more effective it will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really been compounded by the fact that we've had all this learning time at home already.
Yes, yeah. I think a lot of students have already used that as their summer holiday, so
yeah.
Too late.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For some, it's a double summer holiday, isn't it?
Oh,
if you're able to work well at home, yeah, you've got to look at the upsides, don't you? That's that's a really important thing to know as well, isn't it? Is that if you are in the routine, and if you are able to if you've been using the last 3 months as best you can, then you've got to look at this summer as actually a time when you can get ahead of what you might have been before. In the normal summer, no one can ever say how hard they would have worked, but this could be a time when students can actually not catch up, which is the language that the government seems to be using a lot, and which especially Julia and I at QT believe is perhaps not the best language to be using. Why not look at this as a time when students can actually make the most of there not being a whole lot to do, not being able to go away, or not being able to do other normal activities, but actually a time when students can get ahead and go back to school this autumn further ahead than they would have been. And programs like the NTP will seek to do that. And the obviously the aim of the NTP would be that come 6, 7, 8 months' time, students are actually ahead of where they would have been, and not only ahead, but the other factors of tutoring, like being a more independent learner, or falling back in love with a subject because you've had the time to go over it, and it's not just been covered and then moved on. I would say, in terms for those tutors of ours who are listening, you're very well placed to comment on tips. Being the founder of an agency, but also running such a sort of a vibrant Facebook community. What do you think your top 3 tips are for tutors at this in this time? Yeah.
So they're actually a massive advantage over school teachers, and I've felt a little bit obliged to help them out with that so far. At the moment, I think school teachers are probably breathing a massive sigh of relief that this is the last week of the school term, and things might ease off a little bit for them. But then it's a good opportunity for the tutors to step up and then help support students that are looking to get more engaged in their learning through the summer. To keep up to date with the announcements as they come out. All of this is going to happen through the summer. All of this information from Ofqual, the plans for the National Tutoring Programme, when the results come out in August for the first round of non-exam grading, all of this is happening before September. So it's a lot to keep up with, and it really is going to make a big difference to the way that the next school year looks. So keep up with all of this stuff. I'm not really turning this into a top 3 tips. I think that was 2.
Let's make that a top 3 tip. Okay, so tip number 1 is to replace teachers. Good.
Yes. Yeah. Give them a break.
Let teachers off for a bit. They've done sterling work.
And keep up with all the changes that are coming out over the summer, so that you know what to expect when you go back in September. And then one thing that doesn't really get mentioned as much, I think, is to help your students figure out how they can get a balance, because it is still the summer and they are still going to have a stressful year. So remember to include some comments about well-being and mental health in there, and not just keep studying lots. It is going to be tough for them. It's always tough for them. I think it's going to be a bit worse next year.
Yeah, it's going to be so long since they've been in a classroom, isn't it?
They were even scared about having to go back to school and see that many people again when they've been at home for so long.
Yeah, that's a really important one. One that we touched on actually in the 4th workshop of our qualification for tutors, and that just displaying that really is a key part of working one-to-one with a student, with a child, is understanding, or being the one who's able to mediate that mental health and that well-being, being another support structure for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to push you for a third one if there's only two there, Georgina, but is there a top three that you can fill out?
That was my three. That was the third. So besides keeping up with everything.
Sorry, that was second.
Remember to tell them to look after themselves.
Yeah. Okay, maybe one of my top tips should be actually just to listen a bit. But okay, so that's a very good kind of 3 points summing up some of the stuff that we've already said, but also adding in that really important point about making them aware that it can be a tough time for them, and going further than that, showing that you are there to support them even after they've gone back to school if you continue as a tutor for them. I think we'll see that probably a bit more. I know clients of mine have been asking about how often you may just have a tutor for the summer and then you go back to school, but actually this environment is all a bit different, and that tutors are there may be a situation where tutors are kept on even after the start of school, just to sort of manage that going back to school period, and they could being there in the evenings for when, one evening a week for when the student comes back from school and is able just to sort of unload any of those kind of issues they have with that return to school and the return to work. There's a return to sort of, physically handed out homework and all that kind of thing. But really a lot of really important points in there for tutors and for students, and also for parents listening, about what they can do over this summer, because that's really the most important part, is that students are able to kind of work by themselves or with their parents, i.e. not having to sort of hire a tutor necessarily for the whole summer, and being able to catch up again, or being able to really make use of this summer to go back to school the most well prepared they can be. I just wanted to end really, Georgina, with what you had what your vision really was for the Facebook group for tackling tutoring online. Obviously there's so many resources being released on there, and there's already so much kind of conversation that I've seen on there ever since I joined. But where would you like this to go, kind of spilling over the summer into the next academic year?
It really kind of evolved by itself, which is really great. I'm enjoying it. It started purely for the school teachers, because I kind of realised how much of deep water they'd been dropped into. They didn't really know their way around, and it was a steep learning curve for them. So because I felt like I'd already gone a fair way through that learning curve, I started sharing things that I thought would be beneficial, and just inviting a load of school teachers to come and join. I started doing some like demos and things for them. And loads of tutors started wanting to join. I was like, why do you want to be here? Surely this isn't interesting for you. And then realised actually not all of the tutors know how to work online. So it's kind of evolved to add more stuff that's relevant to tutors, because obviously that's my experience. And then I'm really loving the fact that now everyone's getting involved and sharing things in there. It's just become a really interesting conversation. I'm learning a lot myself. So I'm hoping that it is going to continue going, obviously through the next year, when it's going to be very unusual, but I'd like to see it grow, and we can all kind of help support each other and teach each other things in there. Yeah,
I think the profession of tutoring is realising that actually it has been very isolated up till now, and that actually support structures exist in every other profession, and they should exist even more so perhaps in tutoring, where it is about sharing those resources and those little tips to help just to keep the child engaged, or whatever it happens to be.
I'm really loving the fact that it's kind of, and this year as well, within that group it's connecting teachers and tutors who ordinarily kind of had this image of being opposed and doing opposite things. We are working towards the same thing, and this all of these things being announced with the National Tutoring Programme, where tutors are working inside of schools with teachers, and the support that's happening to kind of keep teachers, bring them online. All of these things are kind of killing that image, and I'm very happy about that.
And you're all for that, yeah. So am I. So are we. I think it's amazing. And it could have been that tutoring, having gone wholly online, could have become even more of an isolated. But it seems actually that people being connected online more meant that they were able to sort of, these sort of communities and groups popped up more and more in response to that, which is really, that's amazing to see. Well, yeah. So if you would like to join a network such as this, see, Georgina runs the amazing Tackling Tutoring Online Facebook group. If you'd like to learn more about kind of leveling up your tutoring or receiving CPD in tutoring, perhaps in preparation for the next academic year, then do find out more about Qualified Tutors qualification for tutors at www.qualifiedtutorcommunity.org. I think that there's a wealth of options now for tutors, and with the recent announcement, I think it was yesterday, wasn't it, about how applications will open in August for tutors to become academic mentors through the NTP program, through Teach First. That's a real sign that there are, concrete changes happening. That there's systems being put into place for tutors like you and I to become part of the National Tutoring Programme and really to throw tutoring into the main national sphere. So yeah, thank you very much, Georgina, for joining us. We're on about 3 different groups now, chatting to each other anyway. So that it's amazing to see that tutors kind of all just cross-pollinating across all these different channels. But so much more to hear from you, Georgina, and thank you for providing our listeners with such a wealth of resources and kind of advice.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, well, we will see you all next time. Thank you all. Goodbye. Thanks for listening to the Qualified Tutor podcast, where tutors share their expertise to support the tutoring community. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join our Qualified Tutor community at www.qualifiedtutorcommunity.org or find it in the show notes below. We exist to connect, share, and learn with you because tutoring is a small job that makes a big difference.